let's move on now to our wow moment of the year. Maybe I'll go first on this one since you got the last one. And so for me, I've already alluded to this. It's O1 from OpenAI. It's interesting that simultaneously that expectations were so high for them that they could both be the disappointment of the year and the provider of our biggest wow moment.
Yeah, I think that's just shows how high expectations are, and they continue to be within AI. I think that all of us in AI now are almost TikTokified. I don't even know if that's a word, but in terms of wanting that quick dopamine hit of like, if something isn't happening this week or something that's not wowing us or blowing us away, we kind of just write it off. And so it's interesting that you have them as, your wow moment when it's also my disappointment, because I think it really just ties into expectations are high and we are looking for that next dopamine hit in AI every single week, if not
Mhm.
every day.
What's your wow moment?
So my wow moment is not necessarily from an overall use, but just from a human level of when I just listen to it, and this should give you a key into what it is, but I was just truly impressed. And that was with the Notebook LM and
That's
the
my number
podcasting.
2.
Ah!
That's my number 2.
And the reason why it just was like so human to me, and that's why it wowed me, is their expressions, the way that they talked. It felt like you and I talking on a podcast. And so just from a human level, is it going to change the world? I don't know, but I just thought it was cool. And so that was my wow moment.
Absolutely. I almost had that as my number 1 as well. And we did an episode of this podcast, number 822, which came out in late September. And in that episode, I expressed how blown away I was by Notebook LM. And I also air in its entirety a 12-minute podcast episode about my PhD dissertation, which is so boring, but these fake podcast hosts did manage to make it seem exciting. And so I included it in full in the episode, and people were blown away. That must be one of my most commented posts of the year, of a large number of people reaching out and saying, wow, I hadn't heard of this or I hadn't used this, and now I have used it and it blew me away. Here's what I tried. And so, yeah, that was really cool. I think it was a wow moment for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'll add one sub wow moment in there, which may not get talked about.
Sub-wow.
I hope we have a sound effect for that too. Sub wow. Or maybe it's its own sound effect. But I recently got a Tesla, and the full self-driving on that is incredible. And I was just blown away because as a kid, my mom was like, hey, you really need to learn to drive and do all these things. And I told her one day I will have somebody who drives me around. I did not think it would be a robot and full self-driving, but here we are today. And so just to have like childhood memories of saying something and then to be living it today is truly incredible.
That also, I've got to add my sub wow moment, which
wow.
which is Waymo. I had my first Waymo experience this Northern Hemisphere summer. And that was really cool. Like having a car, because I think that's another level of autonomy beyond Tesla's full self-driving, right? Where with Tesla's full self-driving, you need to have somebody sitting behind the wheel. But to have the Waymos now in San Francisco, and at the time of recording, also in Scottsdale, Arizona, I think, you can just use the Waymo app and a driverless car comes up, picks you up, you get in it, and it drops you off. And that's also, I almost want to make that my biggest wow moment of the year. I don't know how I didn't think of it right off the bat, but because that physical presence, because that's,
yes.
I come back to the Waymo example a lot with when people ask me, oh, like when people find out I work in AI, as the quote, and there a lot of people completely outside of AI will say things like, "Oh, contentious," or like, and I'm like, "Really? Oh, I wasn't aware it was so contentious." And they're like, "Well, yeah, I'm a creative, or I have lots of friends who are creatives, and I can see that. Okay, yeah, I can see why it's so contentious." But for me, I guess I'm so often seeing big changes and benefits, but there are, the Waymo example is one that I come to frequently to say, this is as opposed to something that's happening on your computer screen, this is a physical, very obvious manifestation of AI that you can, when you experience that, when you call a Waymo car, get into it and it drops you off somewhere, you see the steering wheel spinning all on its own and it's making great driving decisions, that makes it clear that in the future, in the not too distant future, we don't need drivers. We don't need
Mhm.
human drivers. And in the United States, in most states, the number one job is truck driver. And there's tons of related jobs that support the truck driver. Uh, you know, you know, people working in cafes along the roadside and that kind of thing. You don't need that. Self-driving cars don't need cafes or motels. And so it's going to make a really big impact. Um, and given the upheaval that will be caused by this, there's things that we need to be doing as a society in terms of retraining people because this AI shift should end up being just like all other automations in the past. It should provide people with more interesting work than ever before. And I mean, this time, there's talk about this time being different, but all past increases in automation have led to more employment and lower unemployment. So I don't know. I've gone touched on a lot of topics there, but I haven't let you speak for a long time. So, Sadie,
No, I was really lucky this year to hear one of the co-CEOs of Waymo talk, and one of the things that she said was, "We are building the single best driver." And I found that really interesting because she talked about how they have over 100,000 fleet of cars out driving, but she talked about it as one driver. They talk about it as a single brain, a single driver brain, and they're only building one. And that just resonated with me so much because it really gives us perspective of what intelligence and machine intelligence can do at scale, right? You only need to build one of the best single drivers and you can change a whole industry. And so I think that's something just to think about, like get really specific in the models that you're building and the domain that you're building, because when you do that at scale, it's incredible.